Okay, so you want to hit those crazy growth targets, right?
Hmm.
Like everyone wants that hockey stick growth, but without becoming in another one of those companies that scaled way too fast and just completely imploded.
Yeah, you don't want to be a cautionary tale.
Right. Nobody wants to be that cautionary tale. And that's exactly why on today's deep dive, we're talking all about how to build that super resilient organizational culture. You know, the kind that not only survives those growth spurts, but actually gets stronger because of them. It's like leveling up your company's ability to handle anything.
It's almost like you're giving your company an immunity boost.
Exactly. And to help us break it all down, we're going straight to the source. We're talking to business strategist Kamyar Shah. Now, Kamyar has worked with tons of companies, helping them navigate these exact growing pains, and he's got some killer insights about how to build a company that's built to last.
What's so interesting about Kamyar's approach is that he really emphasizes the people side of things. It's not just about systems and processes, it's about building a company culture that can actually support rapid growth.
And one of the first things that Kamyar talks about is this shift away from that traditional top-down leadership model to something he calls distributed leadership.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like ditching the whole hero CEO thing and empowering everyone to lead.
It's like saying, look, we don't need one superhero at the top, we need a whole team of leaders.
Right. Imagine a company where literally everyone, no matter their role, feels comfortable sharing their ideas, speaking up, and even making big decisions.
And that takes trust, right? You have to build a culture of trust where people feel empowered to step up. And Kamyar talks about how important training is for leaders at every level. He specifically mentions things like systems thinking and scenario planning.
Okay, so let's break those down. Systems thinking.
Oh,
What does that
yeah.
even mean?
Basically, it's about seeing the big picture, understanding how everything in your company is connected, and how one small decision can have ripple effects throughout the whole organization.
It's like having that 360-degree view of your company.
Exactly. And then there's scenario planning, which is all about anticipating those what-if situations and actually having plans in place to deal with them.
So no crystal ball required, but you're kind of trying to predict the future a little bit,
Right.
right?
In a way, yeah. It's about being proactive, not reactive.
So you're not just putting out fires, you're preventing them in the first place.
I love it.
But how do you even begin to manage all of that communication when your company is growing so rapidly? It's got to be tough, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. As companies grow, communication can get really siloed.
Yeah, and people start to feel disconnected.
Exactly. But Kamyar suggests being really intentional about creating scalable communication channels.
So think like company-wide podcasts, internal blogs, even things like virtual town halls where employees can directly engage with leadership.
It's about making sure everyone feels informed, included, and like they're part of something bigger.
Absolutely. Because the last thing you want is for people to feel like they're out of the loop or even worse, like their voices aren't being heard.
Exactly. And when you get that right, you create a culture of continuous learning, which is so essential for any growing company.
Because the learning never stops, right?
Hipper.
Okay, so we've talked about leadership, communication, and the importance of creating a culture of continuous learning.
Yeah.
But it's not all about the people at the top, right?
Nope.
You've got to make sure the whole company is able to move and adapt as you grow.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of organizational agility comes in.
Agility. So we're not just talking about moving fast here, are we? What does it actually mean for a company to be agile?
Imagine like a jazz band. They're riffing off of each other, right? They're adapting to what they're hearing, creating something new and exciting in the moment.
Okay, I like where this is going. So how does that translate to like the business world?
Think about it. It's about being able to move away from those rigid structures and processes and being more flexible.
Okay, so less about sticking to a strict plan and more about having a framework, but with room to adapt.
Exactly. It's about giving teams the freedom to make decisions, to pivot quickly when they need to, and to adjust to new information or changes in the market. You don't want to get bogged down in bureaucracy.
Absolutely. And I imagine that data plays a big part in all of this, right? You've got to be making decisions based on real-time information.
You hit the nail on the head. Kamyar is a huge advocate for data-driven decision-making. It's about removing the guesswork as much as possible.
And that just makes sense, right? You need to have your finger on the pulse at all times when you're growing quickly.
Yeah.
But data alone isn't enough, is it? You need the right people to interpret that data and then actually do something with it.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial piece of the puzzle, and it's something that every leader I talk to is thinking about these days. Talent.
Finding and keeping great people is always a challenge, but when you're trying to scale quickly, it can feel almost impossible. Like, how do you attract and retain top talent while you're in the middle of this massive growth spurt?
It's tough. But Kamyar has some really practical advice for tackling this. He talks about the importance of what he calls strategic workforce planning.
Strategic workforce planning. Okay, let's unpack that a bit. What does that actually look like in practice?
So instead of waiting until you're in a pinch, you're proactively identifying those potential skill gaps that might pop up as you grow.
So you're thinking ahead, anticipating your needs, and then making a plan to fill those gaps before they become major problems.
Exactly. And that might involve upskilling your existing workforce, or it might mean going out and finding new people with those specific skills you're going to need.
It's all about being proactive and strategic. But once you've attracted that amazing talent, you've got to create an environment where they actually want to stick around, right?
Right. Retention is key. It's way more effective to keep your best people happy and engaged than it is to constantly be recruiting and onboarding new employees.
Makes sense. So how do you make sure those rockstar employees actually want to stay?
Kamyar talks a lot about creating scalable onboarding processes that really set new hires up for success.
Yeah, first impressions are everything, right? You want people to feel welcome and supported from day one.
Definitely. But it's also about things like creating clear career paths within your company so people can see a future for themselves.
Showing your employees that you're actually invested in their growth and that there are opportunities for them to move up and take on new challenges.
It's all about creating that sense of belonging and purpose.
And we can't forget about the importance of building a diverse and inclusive company culture.
Absolutely. That's not just the right thing to do, it's good for business.
A diverse team brings so much more to the table in terms of perspectives and experiences.
Exactly. And when people feel like they can bring their whole selves to work, they're more likely to be engaged and productive.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about leadership, agility, and talent. But I think there's one crucial piece of the puzzle that we haven't talked about yet. What happens when things go wrong? Because let's be real, in a high-growth environment, things are inevitably going to go wrong sometime.
It's the reality.
So how do you build a company that can not only handle the setbacks, but actually come out stronger on the other side?
That's where organizational resilience comes in. And it's a topic that Kamyar is really passionate about.
Okay, so let's dive into that. What does it actually mean for an organization to be resilient? What does that look like in action?
It's not just about bouncing back from setbacks. It's deeper than that. It's really about building in those systems and structures.
It's a mindset.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially the mindset. So you cannot just survive those inevitable bumps in the road, but use them to learn and grow.
So you're talking about taking those oh crap moments and turning them into, okay, we got this. What do we learn?
A moment. Exactly. A truly resilient organization doesn't shy away from failure. Instead, they see it as a valuable opportunity to learn and improve.
It's a total mindset shift. And, you know, it reminds me of something else Kamyar talked about, creating this culture of psychological safety. I'll be honest, when I first heard that term, I wasn't totally sure what it meant. What does psychological safety actually look like in a workplace?
It's simple, really. It means cultivating an environment where people feel safe speaking their minds.
No matter what.
Yikes.
Even if it's a mistake they made or a concern they have or just a completely new idea.
It's about making it clear that there's no room for blame or judgment.
So you're essentially creating a space where it's okay to not have all the answers.
Then to take risks. Calculated ones, of course.
Right. You're not saying throw caution to the wind.
Exactly. But you've got to be able to experiment and innovate without the fear of being punished for trying something new, even if it doesn't work out.
So you're fostering a culture where people feel comfortable speaking up, sharing their ideas, and even admitting when they've messed up. That's huge.
It really is, because that's when the magic happens. When people feel safe to be themselves and share their authentic thoughts and ideas without fear of repercussions, that's when you unlock true innovation.
Because let's be honest, some of the best ideas come from unexpected places.
Right. Those breakthroughs often happen when people feel empowered to think outside the box and challenge conventional wisdom.
Love that. Okay, so creating a resilient mindset is crucial. But what about the more practical, tactical things companies can do? What are some tangible ways to build that resilience?
One of the most important, being prepared.
Oh, preparedness.
That means having systems in place to spot potential risks and disruptions.
So you're talking about going beyond just those what-if scenarios we were talking about earlier.
Right. You have to go beyond just thinking about the what-ifs. You have to have actionable plans in place to deal with those potential challenges.
Contingency plans for, like, everything.
As much as you can, ask yourself the tough questions. What if the economy tanks tomorrow? What if a competitor comes out of nowhere with a game-changing product?
What if we're hit with a natural disaster or another pandemic?
You got it. You've got to think about these things before they happen because that's what'll make or break you in those critical moments.
So being proactive is definitely a recurring theme here. And it makes me wonder, can you even have resilience without adaptability?
No way. They're two sides of the same coin. Resilience isn't about being rigid. It's about being able to bend without breaking.
It's like that saying, the oak breaks in the wind while the willow bends.
Exactly. Think about a bamboo forest for a second. A single stalk of bamboo is strong, sure. But the whole forest is incredibly resilient because it can bend and sway together in the strongest winds.
Wow, that's a powerful image. And it speaks to how everything is connected in a truly resilient organization, right? It's not just about individuals being resilient, it's about the entire entity.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture where people support each other, share their knowledge and resources, and work together to overcome challenges.
It's that collective strength. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of building a resilient mindset, creating those systems for preparedness, and fostering adaptability. But it all comes back to something we touched on earlier, doesn't it? Culture.
100%. Kamyar is adamant that a strong, adaptable culture is the foundation. You can have the best strategy in the world, but without the right culture to support it, it won't get you very far.
It's like having a high-performance car with no engine. It looks impressive, but it's not going anywhere.
Right. You need that powerful engine to drive you forward, and that's what culture does for an organization.
So how do you cultivate a company culture that's built to last?
Well, it all starts with your core values.
Okay, core values. Now, I have to admit, whenever I hear that phrase, I'm always a little hesitant.
It can feel a bit like a buzzword, right?
It does. But something tells me Kamyar doesn't just slap some generic words on a wall and call it a day.
You're right. He's all about bringing those values to life, making them an integral part of everything your company does.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about his approach.
He's a firm believer that core values shouldn't just be empty words written on a wall somewhere.
Right, they actually have to mean something.
Exactly. They need to be integrated into the very fabric of your organization, reflected in your hiring decisions, how you measure performance, how you treat your customers, everything.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
100%. And as your company grows, those values can act as a kind of guiding North Star, helping you stay true to who you are, even as the world around you is changing rapidly.
They're an anchor, in a way.
That's a great way to put it. They provide stability and a sense of continuity, even amidst chaos. But, and this is crucial, defining your values is just the first step.
So what's next? How do you actually bring those values to life so they're not just some inspirational poster hanging in the break room?
Kamyar is a huge believer in the power of storytelling. He says it's one of the most effective ways to communicate values, inspire people, and build a shared sense of purpose.
I'm with him on that. There's something about a good story that just draws people in. But how do you use storytelling to shape company culture?
It starts with paying attention to the stories that are already being told within your company. What are people talking about? What moments do they celebrate?
Are they stories of employees going above and beyond for clients, or teams pulling together to overcome a challenge?
Exactly. Those organic stories reveal what your company truly values, even if those values haven't been explicitly stated.
So it's about tapping into the stories that are already there.
And amplifying them. Share those stories in meetings, internal newsletters, company-wide communications.
So you're shaping the company narrative.
Exactly. And you're subtly reinforcing the kinds of behaviors and values you want to see more of.
This is brilliant. It's about turning those real-life examples into powerful stories that can inspire and motivate others. But it can't just be the leadership team telling these stories, right?
Exactly. It's got to be everyone. Kamyar calls them cultural ambassadors.
Cultural ambassadors. I love that. Who are they, and how do they contribute to a strong company culture?
Think of them as your culture champions. They're the people in your organization who just get it. They embody your values not because they're told to, but because it's just who they are.
They're kind of like those naturally charismatic friends we all have. They don't even have to try. People just gravitate towards them.
Yes, and they lead by example. The key is to identify these natural leaders within your company and give them the platform and the tools to share their stories and passion.
It's so much more authentic and powerful when it comes from your peers rather than just being dictated from the top down, right?
Definitely. It creates a ripple effect throughout the entire organization.
And it's not just about storytelling, is it? Building a strong culture is also about creating those opportunities for people to connect.
It's all connected.
Team building, social events, volunteering.
All of that. Anything that brings people together and strengthens those bonds.
It's about fostering a sense of community.
Exactly. You want people to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Because when people feel connected to their colleagues and believe in their company's mission, they're more likely to be engaged, productive, and yes, resilient when facing challenges.
They feel invested, like they have a stake in the game, and they're more likely to weather those inevitable storms.
So much good stuff here. But I do have one final question for you. How do you keep this going? Because building a strong, adaptable culture isn't something you check off your to-do list and then you're done.
Right. You're right. It's an ongoing process.
A journey.
Yes. It takes constant attention and nurturing, especially as your company evolves. You have to be willing to adapt and make changes along the way.
So it's about being flexible and open to feedback.
And being willing to challenge your assumptions. What worked 2 years ago might not work today.
It's like tending a garden, you know?
Ooh, that's a good analogy.
You've got to give it water, prune it, make sure it's got the right nutrients, and even then, you've got to be ready to switch things up depending on the season.
So true. And just like a garden, your company's culture needs that constant care and attention if you want it to thrive, especially when you're growing quickly.
Makes total sense. So how do you know when it's time to make a change? Like, are there any warning signs that your company culture might need a little bit of a refresh?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's something that leaders should be asking themselves all the time. One of the biggest red flags is when employee morale or engagement starts to take a nosedive.
So if you're seeing things like productivity slipping, more people calling out sick, or just this overall vibe of negativity.
Yeah, those are all signs that something's off.
And you've got to address that quickly, right? Because a toxic culture can spread like wildfire.
It can. And it can really do some serious damage to your company in the long run.
Absolutely. It can impact everything from how hard it is to find good people to your company's reputation to, let's be real, your bottom line.
And another warning sign, when you stop seeing innovation, if people are afraid to speak their minds or take risks, your company's going to stagnate.
Yeah, it's like they say, innovate or die.
Well, maybe not that dramatic, but you get the point. Companies need to be able to adapt and change, especially now when things are moving so fast.
So true. Okay, so let's say you've taken a hard look at your company's culture and you've realized that there's room for improvement. What are some practical things you can do to start moving in the right direction?
Communication is key. And I don't just mean top-down communication.
So it's not just about the higher-ups making announcements.
Exactly. You want to create an environment where everyone feels comfortable speaking up and sharing their feedback.
So maybe things like anonymous employee surveys, town hall meetings where people can voice their opinions, even just creating an open-door policy where anyone can talk to their manager about anything.
All great ideas. The point is to create multiple channels for feedback and then, just as importantly, to actually show your employees that you're listening to what they're saying.
And that you're willing to actually do something with that feedback, right?
Yeah.
Not just file it away and forget about it.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words. So if your employees are telling you that they're burnt out, maybe it's time to rethink your policies around things like work-life balance.
Right. Or if they're saying they feel stifled creatively, maybe you need to shake things up and encourage more brainstorming and collaboration.
Exactly. You've got to be willing to adapt and evolve. And sometimes that means being brave enough to make tough decisions or to challenge the way things have always been done.
It's about being open to change.
Right.
And recognizing that what worked yesterday might not work tomorrow, especially as your company continues to grow and the world around you keeps changing.
Exactly. And that's what it really means to build a resilient, scalable organization. It's not about finding the perfect formula and clinging to it no matter what. It's about being open to feedback, constantly learning, and being brave enough to evolve over time.
It's about embracing the journey.
Love that. Embrace the journey.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive. We've covered so much ground today.
You really have.
But I hope you're walking away feeling energized and ready to tackle whatever challenges come your way.
Me too. Kamyar has given us a lot to think about.
As always, we'd love to leave you with a parting thought. Something to reflect on as you continue on your own journey of building a resilient, adaptable, Truly remarkable organization.
So, what's resonating with you after this deep dive?
What really stands out to me is just how crucial the human element is in all of this. It's easy to get caught up in the data, the technology, all the systems and processes. But at the end of the day, companies are built by people.
Couldn't agree more.
And creating a culture where those people feel valued, heard, and empowered to do their best work, well, that's not just a nice to have, it's essential.
It's the secret sauce.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's about building a company where people feel like they belong, where they feel connected to something bigger than themselves, and where they feel excited to come to work every day. That's how you build a company that's not just built to scale, but built to truly last.
Beautifully said. Building a company that lasts, that's the dream, right? And it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
It's all about embracing the journey. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dives. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.